So my name is Pat Rawson. I am the co-founder of Curve Labs, and we are one of the organizations currently engaged in PrimeDAO. PrimeDAO is sort of a DAO of DAOs, if you will, although I would not call Curve Labs a DAO. We are an incorporated business in Germany, and we kind of play by the compliance rules as such. So today I'm going to talk about Web3 control networks, which you can also think of as ownership networks. You can think of them as relations of ownership between different entities, especially in the corporate world. Although in the cryptocurrency world, we see a lot of small token holders who have very small pieces of the network through their governance tokens. Now, this is actually a very important topic to approach with cryptocurrency and Web3 in general, because DAOs are programmable organizations. And as such, they allow us to do much more interesting things with ownership than you might see in the traditional world and the traditional legal structures around equity and ownership. When we're dealing with ownership in the DAO world and we're quantizing what ownership is, we're dealing with a couple of object primitives, as I like to call them. We're dealing with transferable tokens, which you understand as governance tokens, and they could be regulated in the sense that there's some sort of backdoor, like a USDC. They could also be just normal tokens, as we understand them. We're also dealing with reputation or point scoring, or these values that you assign to a particular address that belong to that address and that address alone. What we have not done in kind of the Web3 world, which I would think would be a very fun place to explore, is this one person, one vote style mechanism where simply by having an address, you have a vote in an organization. This is how most cooperatives in the real world, quote unquote, are structured, and I would like to see more of that here, ideally. There's some key relationships in control networks. I don't want to jump too much into this because it's a 20-minute talk, and I thought it was 30 minutes. But you can see on this next slide what Toyota's control network looks like. So with Toyota, we are dealing with somewhere close to 150 different entities that have co-ownership relations in each other. And this is incredible. We do not see this level of complexity anywhere in the Web3 space today, even with your biggest DAOs. So from my perspective, we actually have a challenge here, and we have a provocation to begin to create more complex co-ownership relations. And the argument that I want to put forth here is that this would be good for the space overall. This would help cement us as crypto institutional actors in a field of primarily hostile actors to ourselves when we look at the state and we look at traditional finance and so forth. Yeah, if you want to really dive into this, which I recommend you do, I cannot show this paper enough. Global ownership and corporate control networks. Please take a look. They analyze how business works on a global scale and who owns who exactly. We already discussed this. There's one thing that I want to point out, which is a key characteristic of the world's global ownership network, and that is there is a large connected component at the center of it that primarily consists of financial institutions that all co-own each other. So when you are dealing with a JP Morgan or a Commerce Bank or any one of these financial actors, you're actually more likely to be dealing with a sort of super organism or a super entity where more than 75% of its ownership belongs to these other financial actors. So there is a tightly recursive nexus of ownership relations existing at the very core of the institutional structures of our world. And this super entity controls most of the liquidity, most of the entities, and arguably, I would say, most of the power in this day and age. And jumping into the numbers some more, we can see it's obscured by the plants over here. But if we see the top 20 entities, we can see cumulatively they control about they own about 27% of the ownership in existence today in business. And I find this number to be extremely problematic. I don't think this number should be as high as it is. And again, I feel a provocation here, whereas Web3 folks, as people playing in a new institutional space, we can challenge this number, and we should challenge this number. We should aim to decentralize this 27%. We should not let the majority of the power over liquidity and finance in this world exist with these 20 entities, because they do not have our best interests in mind. So how can we build better control networks in Web3? How do we answer this provocation? We'll start by looking at one that exists today. And this is kind of a mock of Uniswap's control network. You can see here there are a handful of VC that control about 18% of the network, which is substantial in my opinion. Like I mentioned before, there's a number of small token holders. And recently, or not recently, but about a year ago, there was a bit of a spin out from Uniswap, a smaller organization called Uniswap Grants that they pushed outside of themselves. And I think that's good. If we want to approach complexity, we need to introduce a system of organizations that can attenuate complexity effectively. Now, going to the side here for a second, if we want to do this effectively, we need to sort of play into the second future, which I'm trying to articulate here. Because going back to Uniswap, this 18% controlled by VC, if those dynamics are taken to an extreme, we can see that there is a narrative here where most of what we do is just going to be subsumed by traditional finance. This large connected component of financial institutions, they're simply going to own most of the DAOs that we build because they're the ones who put the most money in the token sale and buy all the governance tokens. And I think we should strive to avoid that. Now, I'm not a maximalist. I understand the practicalities of finance. And if you need to raise money, yes, you're going to go to Andreessen Horowitz or what have you, and you're going to go raise some money. But should 18% of the #1 decentralized exchange protocol in our in Web3, should that be owned by VC or traditional financial actors? I would say probably not, or you need to have some sort of counterbalancing force. So my argument here is we need a DAO native control network. We need to be moving liquidity and ownership between DAOs and start building an institutional nexus of our own. And that is the second future I'm trying to articulate here. So if we take our previous example of Uniswap, we fall into this thesis and we play to this provocation, we can see that Uniswap can do a lot more work in spinning out more sub-DAOs and spinning out more joint ventures with other DAOs, in assigning ownership to other DAOs in 18% or excess of 18% in order to counteract these centralized votes or this centralized ownership by these particular financial actors. And I think here we are now beginning to approach something that resembles the complexity that you might see in Toyota's control network. Granted, here we're still only seeing something like 11 entities plus small token holders. That's a far cry from 150 entities, but it is a much better start. So continuing to focus on future 2, beyond this example, we have a number of questions that we need to kind of explore. How do we distribute ownership effectively? What tools exist for these purposes? What tools do we need, and what tools can we imagine? And while we have quite a number of DAO tools that exist today, we have very few DAO tools that exist solely to answer this question of DAO-to-DAO interactions in assigning ownership from DAO 1 to DAO 2 in a streamlined, sophisticated manner. So what we went ahead and did as Curve Labs is we partnered with Block Science, who we love so dearly working with, and we explored this. And we published a DAO-to-DAO digest where we kind of discuss, OK, what are the tools that can conceivably exist? I encourage you to go online and check this out. And you can see that joint ventures, this exists in the real world. This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Community swaps, token swaps, this is how we distribute ownership between each other. funding public goods. Gitcoin has been the major rallier of this, but we absolutely need to do this at a higher level across the space ubiquitously. And DAO mergers. So we have yet to see many DAO mergers. And I would argue that in our particular time in this industry, we have reached the point where mergers are absolutely necessary, and they offer benefits to both sides. So I would be very, very excited to see some of these big DAOs talk very openly about becoming even bigger DAOs, because this is how we are going to rival the current financial institutions that exist. So here is a speculative mapping that I put together of the types of DAO-to-DAO tooling that can exist. You can go ahead and explore this on your own. Like I said, it's in the article. Today, we're going to focus on only one of these tools that Curve Labs has been building in partnership with ByteRocket and PrimeDAO and Collectivo Labs and so many other folks. And that is negotiation interfaces and protocols that help accelerate mergers, acquisitions, and trade, what we call DAO-to-DAO interfaces. And we have created the PrimeDeals application for your pleasure. This was over a year-long development effort, from research and specification to smart contracts, to audit, to product, the whole spiel. And in 4 to 6 weeks, this will be live for your DAOs to trade with each other. Thank you. There was a lot of workshops on those sprints. So enter PrimeDeals. PrimeDeals is an interface for DAO-to-DAO interactions, such as token swaps, co-liquidity provision, and joint venture formation. For version 1, we are just doing token swaps. There's a very big area to explore, and we went with the one feature that we think is the most critical feature for building co-ownership relations between DAOs. Deals will launch mid-May, as I mentioned. And I wanted to offer some final theory as to why token swaps especially are important. Why is this critical? When you have multiple liquidity sources, you increase your odds of long-term survival. So if DAO 1 crashes but DAO 2 doesn't crash, and I have tokens from DAO 1 and DAO 2, well, guess what? I can liquidate DAO 2 to survive the bear market, because DAO 1 isn't worth anything anyway. So we increase the odds of our collective memory perpetuating itself. The individual shareholder is driven by greed, the network by growth. And I truly believe that co-ownership mediates this tension. Co-ownership sits nicely in the middle, and it helps stop this sort of aggressive crypto tribalism from putting itself forward. We should not have these competitive discourses about, oh, my coin is better than yours, or your token sucks. If we all own each other's tokens, we all support each other. We all have the co-incentives to work together as a controlled network. And you can see on the right-hand side here the number of relations that are possible between DAOs. There's a scaling property here that is extremely important. Each of those relations represent personnel, they represent capital, they represent information ecology. And to have more and more relations means that an ecosystem can truly flourish and be resilient to exogenous shocks. So we're going to throw the dice here and hope that the staging app works. Oh no! Oh geez. You got to be careful about doing these types of things. All right. So welcome to PrimeDeals, or our Vercel staging instance of PrimeDeals. Web3 partnerships made easy. So if we go to, and I'm going to give you just a very brief tour of this. There was a deal session yesterday. I don't need to dive into this. So when we view all deals, here we can see the deals that DAOs want to make with each other. DAO token swap. They've created an open proposal to swap 50 to 500K worth of VITA with an aligned project. That's very exciting. I want to know more about that. So we click into the deal. The first clause of the deal is just they might need to work on their presentation there, but I get the essence of what they're trying to do. I see make an offer, and I see a discussion section. Well, I could discuss here, and I could say, listen, I want some more clarity on this clause, because it looks like gibberish. Or I can go here and I can make an offer. What I can also do is I can take this particular deal and I can fork it and I can create another deal with the exact same properties. I'm going to click cancel and I'm going to go back to home here. So we have these open deals here. If we go to partnered deals, we can see the active process of negotiation between two DAOs, the Floresta DAO and the Clemati DAO. Who did the QA on this? So there's a description of the deal. There's clauses for the deal. There are votes. So each DAO has certain representatives who are responsible for the deal. And I only have 2 minutes left. I'm not going to dive too much more into this, but you can see that this is actually going to be a very useful tool. We use an escrow smart contract flow so that when the token swap occurs, it is done trustlessly, it is done on-chain, and you don't have to worry about your funds. Funds are safe and what have you. So going back to my deck and just wrapping things up, I wanted to end by giving a shout out to the Proposal Inverter team. This is another team which is actually yes. There's dozens of you. But this is another team that's practicing DAO to DAO. They've gone to 3 or 4 DAOs. They've structured the Proposal Inverter as a joint venture between DAOs. And they've been able to raise funding and build a cross-DAO team to build a necessary DAO to DAO primitive. And this is exactly what we need to see. This is exactly the type of acceleration which is going to push our DAO to DAO ecosystem forward and create the crypto institutional control network that I would like to see, and I hope you would like to see as well. Thank you.